The cursor blinks, a relentless, tiny black heart, beating on an empty white screen. One beat for every second Alara has failed. One beat for every word that refuses to come. One beat for every promise she made to herself that she is currently, spectacularly, breaking. Outside, the wind howls a mournful song through the pines, a sound that has become the soundtrack to her isolation. It claws at the windows of the small cabin, a restless animal trying to get in. For weeks, it was a comfort, a shield of noise that kept the silence, and the thoughts that bred in it, at bay. Tonight, it just sounds lonely. She pushes back from the small wooden desk, the chair legs scraping a protest against the floorboards. The scent of old paper, pine sap, and the faint, bitter smell of a dying fire fills the single room. It's the smell of her retreat, her escape, her prison. Mark's voice still echoes here sometimes, slick and condescending. "Another little hobby, Alara? This writing thing? When are you going to get a real job, darling?" Something stable. He'd said it with a smile, the kind that never reached his eyes, the kind that was meant to look like concern but felt like a perfectly polished stone, small and hard and meant for throwing. Her manuscript, the one she'd poured 3 years of her life into, had been her answer, and when the rejections came, a soul-crushing avalanche of polite, dismissive no's, he'd patted her shoulder. "It's for the best. You're too sensitive for that world anyway. Too sensitive." The words had been a verdict, a diagnosis of a terminal illness. Her sensitivity was her flaw, the cracked part of her foundation that made her unsuitable. For him, for success, for the sharp-edged, glittering world he inhabited. So she'd run. She'd taken the small inheritance her grandfather left, Harriman who had smelled of sawdust and kindness, who had told her sensitivity was a form of sight, and bought this cabin, sight unseen. A dot on a map surrounded by a sea of green. A place where no one could tell her what she was. A place to heal, or at the very least, a place to lick her wounds in peace. But the wounds aren't healing. They're just quiet, festering beneath the surface. And the writing, the one thing she thought was truly hers, has abandoned her too. The story that once burned inside her is now just cold ash. A particularly violent gust of wind rattles the door in its frame, followed by a sound that is not the wind. A heavy, sodden thud. Alara freezes, her hand halfway to the kettle. Her heart, which had been beating a slow, melancholic rhythm, now hammers against her ribs like a trapped bird. It's nothing. A branch. A heavy, waterlogged branch falling from one of the ancient pines that guard the cabin. It has to be. No one comes out here. The nearest town is a 40-minute drive down a winding, unforgiving dirt road. The locals in town spoke of the woods as if they were alive, as if they held secrets better left, undisturbed. They'd looked at her, a single woman buying the old Miller cabin, with a mixture of pity and suspicion. Then, another sound, a low, pained groan. Not human, and yet, not entirely animal either. It's a sound of deep, resonant suffering. Her blood runs cold. Bear, mountain lion. The woods were full of them. Her grandfather had taught her about them, to respect them, to give them a wide berth. "Lock the door and don't make a sound," he'd said. She stands motionless in the center of the small room, every nerve ending alight. The fire has dwindled to embers, casting long, dancing shadows that turn familiar shapes into monsters. The wind shrieks, and beneath it, she hears it again, a guttural whine of pain. Logic, a cold and sensible voice that sounds disturbingly like Mark, tells her to stay put, to barricade the door, to wait for morning. It is the smart thing to do, the safe thing to do. But then, another sound cuts through the storm, thin and piercing. A baby's cry. No, it's impossible. It's the wind. Her mind, frayed from loneliness and failure, is playing tricks on her. A baby? Out here? In this storm? She takes a hesitant step toward the door, her bare feet cold on the wood floor. The crying comes again, a desperate, terrified wail that slices through her fear and strikes something deeper, something raw and aching. It's the sound of absolute helplessness. She remembers standing in their pristine apartment, surrounded by boxes Mark's assistant had packed for her, and feeling a silence so profound it was its own kind of screaming. She had been helpless then. Abandoned. No one had come. No one had knocked on her door to see if she was okay. They had all sided with him, with his sensible, logical world where sensitive women with failed hobbies were disposable. She will not be that person. She will not hear a cry for help and do nothing. Her hand closes around the cool metal of the doorknob, her knuckles white. This is stupid. This is reckless. This is how women in horror movies die. She doesn't care. Taking a deep, shaky breath that does nothing to calm her, she turns the lock. The click is deafeningly loud. She pulls the heavy wooden door inward, and the storm rushes in to meet her. A blast of cold, wet air that smells of pine needles and rain and something else. Something wild and metallic. Blood. There, slumped against the threshold, is a wolf. It's enormous. Bigger than any wolf she's ever seen in pictures or documentaries. Its fur is the color of a moonless night, thick and matted with rain and dark, sticky blood. A deep gash runs along its flank, ugly and raw. Its head is lifted just an inch off the porch, and its eyes are fixed on her. They are not the simple, instinct-driven eyes of an animal. They are intelligent, aware, and filled with a desperate, urgent plea. And curled between its massive front paws, wrapped in a thick, oilskin-like bundle, is the source of the crying. A baby? Its tiny face is red and puckered, its cries thin and weak against the roar of the wind. Ilara's mind short-circuits. A wolf. A baby. A bleeding, giant wolf protecting a human baby. None of this makes sense. It's a fever dream. A hallucination born of isolation. The wolf makes that sound again, a low rumble in its chest, and nudges the bundle with its nose. A clear, unmistakable gesture. Help him. The cold, logical part of her brain is screaming. It's a trap. It's a trick. A wild animal is a wild animal. But her heart, her too sensitive heart, sees only two creatures in desperate need. She sees the exhaustion in the wolf's gaze, the way its body trembles with the effort of staying conscious. She sees the pale, chilled skin of the infant, and she remembers the silence of her empty apartment, the feeling of being utterly alone. Okay, she whispers, the words stolen by the wind. Okay, come on. She doesn't know if she's talking to the wolf, the baby, or herself. She backs away from the door, leaving it wide open. An invitation, a monumental breach of the fortress she's built around herself. She's letting the wilderness in. She's letting in the danger, the unknown, the impossible. The wolf watches her, its golden eyes unnervingly bright in the dim light. With a groan that seems to tear from its very soul, it begins to move. It drags itself forward, pulling its wounded body over the threshold. The scrape of its claws on the wood is a sound that will be burned into her memory forever. It moves with agonizing slowness, never letting the bundle with the baby out of its sight, pushing it gently ahead with its snout. Once inside, it collapses onto the braided rug before the hearth, its breathing a ragged, wet sound. Its mission complete. Its energy is gone, but its eyes never leave her. They are a silent, searing weight. Elara's fear is a physical thing, a block of ice in her stomach, but the baby's cries have turned into weak, gasping whimpers. That is the more immediate danger. She approaches slowly, her hands held out where the wolf can see them. I'm going to check on the baby, she says, her voice trembling. The wolf doesn't growl. It just watches, a silent, wounded sentinel. She kneels and carefully, so carefully, lifts the infant from its protected spot. The oilskin is cold and damp, but inside, the baby is wrapped in layers of soft, worn wool. He's so small, so fragile. His skin is icy to the touch. She has to get him warm. Now, carrying the baby, she rushes to her bed, piling the quilts around him. She needs hot water. She needs to check him for injuries. Her mind, which had been a fog of despair moments before, is now razor-sharp, focused. She works quickly, her movements efficient. She fills the kettle, puts it on the small gas stove. She finds the first aid kit her grandfather insisted she keep stocked. As she gathers supplies antiseptics, bandages, clean cloths, she keeps glancing back at the wolf. He hasn't moved. He just lies there, bleeding on her rug, his golden eyes tracking her every step. There is a stillness about him, a control that is profoundly unnatural. His gaze isn't just watching her, it's assessing her, trusting her. And that, more than anything, is what terrifies her. The days that follow bleed into a strange, surreal routine. The cabin, once a symbol of her solitude, is now a makeshift infirmary. It smells of milk formula she'd found in a dusty box in the town's general store, antiseptic, and the persistent, musky scent of wolf. She names the baby Leo. It feels right, strong, a small lion. He is, thankfully, unharmed, just cold and hungry. After the first 24 hours of warmth and regular feedings, he transforms from a pale, whimpering thing into a responsive, healthy infant with a surprisingly loud cry and a gummy, infectious smile. The wolf is another story. She has taken to calling him Shadow in her mind. It fits the way he lies so still in the corner, a patch of living darkness against the pale wood of the floor. It fits the way his presence fills the room even in his silence. Cleaning his wound is a terrifying, intimate ritual. The first time she'd approached with a bowl of warm water and a cloth, her heart hammering a frantic rhythm against her ribs. She expected a snarl, a flash of teeth. Instead, he'd simply laid his head down on his paws and watched her with those unnerving, intelligent eyes. He'd flinched when the antiseptic touched the raw flesh, a tremor running through his massive frame, but he'd made no sound of aggression. The gash is deep, too clean for an animal attack. It looks almost surgical, like it was made by a blade, a very large, very sharp blade. The thought sends a fresh wave of fear through her. What was he running from? She talks to them, both of them. It starts as a way to fill the silence, to soothe the baby and to keep her own fear at bay. She tells Leo about the pictures in a children's book she found, her voice soft and melodic. But her conversations with Shadow are different. Late at night, when Leo is sleeping soundly in a makeshift crib she's fashioned from a laundry basket, she sits by the fire, mending a tear in one of Leo's wool blankets, and she talks to the wolf. "I don't know why I'm doing this," she admits to him one night, her voice barely a whisper. The only light is from the fire, painting his dark fur with flickering strokes of orange and red. "Everyone I've ever known would call me insane. Mark?" He would have a field day. "See, Alara, I told you. Hopelessly impractical, terminally romantic. He'd probably call animal control." The wolf's ear twitches, but he doesn't move. He is the perfect confidant, silent, non-judgmental. "My grandfather would have understood, I think," she continues, the needle pausing in her hand. "He used to say the world is a lot bigger and stranger than we let ourselves believe. He saw things in these woods, felt things. People in town thought he was an old eccentric." She finds herself telling him things she's never told anyone, about the crushing weight of the blank page, about the hollow ache in her chest that she's been carrying around since Mark left, a space where she thinks a family was supposed to go. "He said I wasn't maternal. That was another one of my failings," she says, a bitter laugh escaping her. "And look at me now, running a nursery for a mystery baby and a giant bleeding wolf. Maybe he was right. Maybe this is just another way for me to be a failure." She glances at Shadow. His golden eyes are fixed on her, and in their depths, she sees something that looks unnervingly like disagreement, like protest. It has to be a trick of the firelight. Two things happen on the fifth day. The first is that Leo laughs, a real, bubbling, joyous sound. She's dangling her grandfather's old silver pocket watch in front of him, and he bats at it with a clumsy fist, his face splitting into a wide, happy grin. The sound is like a key turning in a long-locked room in her heart, a window being thrown open. For the first time in months, a genuine, unforced smile touches her own lips. The second thing is more unsettling. She's changing the dressing on Shadow's wound. She's been doing it twice a day, and while it looks clean, it's still a fearsome injury. But today, as she peels back the bandage, she gasps. The gash, which should have taken weeks to close, months to heal properly, is almost completely gone. It's impossible. Where there was a deep, open wound, There is now just a thin, pink line of newly healed skin, barely visible beneath his thick fur. She runs her fingers over it, her mind reeling. There's no heat, no swelling. It's as if the injury was weeks old, not days. She looks from the healed wound to the wolf's face. His golden eyes watch her, calm and knowing. "How?" she whispers, her voice shaking. He doesn't answer, of course. He just lets out a soft huff of air. And for the first time since he arrived, he moves. Not a tremor of pain or a shift of weight, but a deliberate, fluid motion. He rises to his feet. Ilara scrambles backward, her breath catching in her throat. He is immense. Standing, his shoulders are nearly level with her own. He is a creature of myth, of nightmare, a being of pure, primal power, contained in muscle and bone and midnight fur. The small cabin seems to shrink around him. He takes a single, silent step toward her. Fear, cold and absolute, seizes her. This is it. She was a fool. She let the monster in, and now he is healed and strong, and he is going to. He stops. He lowers his massive head and gently, so gently, nudges her hand with his cold, wet nose. Section 8. It's a gesture of thanks, of reassurance. Then he turns, walks to the laundry basket where Leo is sleeping, and lies down beside it, positioning his body between the baby and the door. He curls into a protective crescent, lets out a long, deep sigh and closes his eyes. Ilara stands frozen, her mind a whirlwind of confusion and awe, instantaneous healing, unnerving intelligence, a fierce, protective instinct, not for his own young, but for a human child. This is not just a wolf. She doesn't know what he is, but he is not just a wolf. Her fear, which had been a constant humming presence, begins to recede. In its place, something else blooms, a strange, profound sense of safety. With this impossible creature guarding her door, the howling wind and the dark, secret-filled woods no longer seem like a threat. She walks over to him, her heart still beating a little too fast. She hesitates for only a moment before sinking to the floor beside him. He smells of the forest, of rain and damp earth and something uniquely his own, something warm and wild. Slowly, tentatively, she reaches out a hand and lays it on his back. His fur is thick and surprisingly soft. Beneath it, she can feel the solid warmth of him, the steady, slow rhythm of his breathing. He doesn't flinch. He doesn't even open his eyes. But she feels a low, almost inaudible rumble vibrate through his chest and up into her palm. It's not a growl, it's a purr. And in that moment, sitting on the floor of her isolated cabin, with a miracle baby sleeping beside her and a mythical beast purring under her touch, Ilara feels a sense of belonging she hasn't felt in her entire life. A fragile, impossible peace settles over the cabin. The routine continues, but its texture has changed. Fear has been replaced by a quiet wonder. The looming presence of shadow is no longer a source of anxiety, but a deep, grounding comfort. He is a silent guardian, a constant shadow at her heels. He follows her from the stove to the desk, to the small armchair where she rocks Leo to sleep. He lies by the door while she's inside, and on the porch when she steps out for firewood, his golden eyes scanning the tree line, ever watchful. He eats the food she offers, stew meat, leftovers from her own simple meals, with a surprising delicacy. He never begs, just waits patiently until she sets the bowl down for him. Her writing remains blocked. The blinking cursor is still a taunt. But it matters less. Somehow, her world, once so cavernously empty, is now full. Full of the scent of baby powder and wolf, the sound of Leo's gurgles and Shadow's soft breathing, the sight of two impossible beings who have crashed into her life and rearranged its every parameter. She talks to Shadow constantly now. The words just spill out of her, a stream of consciousness narrative of her day, her thoughts, her memories. "I tried to write again today," she tells him one afternoon, stroking the thick fur behind his ears. He leans into her touch, his eyes half closed in pleasure. It's a story about a woman who loses her voice. Literally. She wakes up one morning and she just can't speak. All the words are trapped inside her. She sighs, looking toward her laptop, which sits closed on the desk like a tombstone. "I think maybe I am that woman. I have all these things I want to say, all these feelings, but when I try to put them on the page, they turn to dust. Mark used to read my early drafts. He'd say they were overwrought, too emotional. He wanted me to write thrillers, something commercial, something that would sell. She feels a low growl rumble in Shadow's chest, a vibration of displeasure that travels up her arm. She smiles, a small, sad smile. Yeah, I thought so too, she whispers. You're a much better critic. The connection between Shadow and Leo is a source of constant fascination. When Leo cries, Shadow is instantly alert, nudging the baby with his nose until Ilara can get to him. When Leo is on a blanket on the floor, kicking his legs, Shadow lies nearby, watching him with an expression of intense focus, as if guarding the most precious treasure in the world. One evening, Leo, who has recently discovered the joy of rolling over, manages to propel himself across the blanket until he is nestled against the wolf's side. He reaches out a tiny starfish hand and grabs a fistful of dark fur. Ilara's breath catches, her protective instincts flaring, but Shadow doesn't move a muscle. He remains utterly still, allowing the baby to tug and pull, his posture a study in patient tolerance. He turns his massive head and licks Leo's cheek with his big wet tongue. Leo squeals with delight, his whole body wiggling with laughter. Ilara's heart clenches with an emotion so fierce and potent it almost hurts. It's not just wonder anymore. It's a deep, swelling affection that encompasses them both. This strange, broken, beautiful little family she has stumbled into, she has never felt less alone. The idyll is shattered on a crisp, clear morning 2 weeks after their arrival. The sound is what alerts her first, a sound that doesn't belong here. The crunch of tires on the gravel of the track that leads to her cabin. It's a sound of the outside world, the world she fled. A world of sharp edges and sharper words. Shadow is on his feet in an instant, a low, menacing growl starting deep in his chest. The fur along his spine bristles. He moves to the door, placing his body squarely in front of it, a living wall of black fur and honed muscle. Ilara's blood turns to ice water. No one knows she's here. No one except... No, it can't be. She scoops a startled Leo from his basket, holding him tight against her chest. Her heart is a frantic drum against his small back. A car door slams. The sound is an act of violence in the quiet morning air. Then a voice she never wanted to hear again. Ilara, are you in there? Honestly, this is absurd. I had to hire a private investigator to find this hovel. Mark. He sounds exactly the same. Condescending, exasperated, proprietary, as if her leaving was a personal inconvenience. He's finally gotten around to rectifying. Shadow's growl intensifies, a terrifying guttural sound that vibrates through the floorboards. It's a sound that promises death. What in God's name is that? Do you have a dog? Mark calls out, his voice tinged with annoyance. Footsteps crunch on the porch steps. Ilara, open this door. We need to talk. This little stunt of yours has gone on long enough. Ilara is paralyzed by a cold, familiar dread. The same dread that used to creep over her whenever he would critique her work or her personality or her life choices. It's the dread of being found wanting, of being diminished. The doorknob rattles. It's locked? You're kidding me. Ilara. Shadow lets out a single, sharp bark that shakes the very walls of the cabin. It's not a dog's bark. It is the roar of a predator. Outside, Mark falls silent. For a moment, the only sound is Leo's whimpering and the low, constant rumble of the wolf. Fine, Mark's voice says, tight with anger. Fine. Have it your way. His footsteps retreat. The car door opens, then slams shut. Ilara closes her eyes, relief washing over her in a dizzying wave. He's leaving. He's actually leaving. The sound of the engine starting is a sweet, sweet song of deliverance. But then it stops. The driver's side door opens again. Footsteps, heavier this time, angrier, march back to the cabin. I am not being chased off by some stray mutt, he snarls, his voice right outside the door now. You are coming home with me, Ilara. Your little wilderness adventure is over. There's a loud splintering crack as he puts his shoulder to the door. The old wood groans, the frame shuddering. Shadow goes rigid. No, Ilara whispers, backing away, clutching Leo so tightly he starts to cry in earnest. Another crash against the door. This time the lock splinters. The door flies open, slamming against the inside wall. And Mark stands there, framed in the doorway, his handsome face twisted in a mask of fury. He's wearing a tailored peacoat and expensive shoes, utterly alien in her rustic world. His eyes take in the scene at the messy cabin, the baby in her arms, the enormous black wolf standing between them. His expression shifts from anger to disbelief, then to disgust. "What the hell is this?" he breathes, his gaze fixing on Leo. "Where did you get a baby? Did you steal it? God, Ilara, I knew you were unstable, but this—" Shadow takes one step forward, and the growl that rips from his throat is no longer a warning. It is a promise of violence. It's the sound of the abyss opening up. Mark flinches back, his eyes widening in genuine fear. But his pride, his massive, wounded pride, won't let him retreat. His eyes dart around the room and land on the fireplace poker. "Get back, you filthy animal," he hisses, snatching the heavy iron rod. "Mark, no, stop it," Ilara screams, her voice raw with terror. "Get out, just get out." "Not without you," he snarls, brandishing the poker. "I'm not letting people say you left me for this squalor." He takes a step forward, raising the poker. It happens in a blur of motion, a black streak of fur and fury. Shadow doesn't hesitate. He launches himself forward, a silent, deadly projectile aimed at the threat. He is not the gentle, patient creature she has come to know. He is a weapon. Mark cries out, a pathetic yelp of shock, and swings the poker wildly. There is a sickening thud as iron connects with flesh and bone. Shadow yelps, a sharp cry of pure agony, and his momentum is broken. He stumbles, his front leg buckling at an unnatural angle. But even as he falls, he twists, snapping at the man who hurt him. His teeth close on the sleeve of Mark's expensive coat, tearing the fabric with a sound like ripping canvas. Mark screams, scrambling backward, his face white with terror. He trips over his own feet and falls out of the doorway, landing hard on the porch. He drops the poker, which clatters onto the wooden planks. He stares at the wolf, at the blood now dripping from a fresh wound on its shoulder, at the unholy rage in its golden eyes. He looks at Ilara, at the crying baby in her arms, at the absolute chaos of the scene. He sees insanity. He sees something he cannot control, cannot comprehend, and it breaks him. With a strangled sob, he scrambles to his feet and runs. He doesn't look back. He throws himself into his car, fumbles with the keys, and the engine roars to life. Tires spit gravel as he peels away, the sound of his retreat fading into the vast, indifferent quiet of the woods. Silence descends. It's over. He's gone. Ilara's knees give out. She sinks to the floor, her body shaking uncontrollably. Leo is wailing, his fear a palpable thing against her chest. In front of her, Shadow whimpers a low, pained sound. He tries to put weight on his front leg and collapses again with another cry. The wound on his shoulder is bleeding freely, a dark, pulsing stain against his black fur. He took the blow for her. He saw the threat and put his body in the way. He protected her. A wave of emotion, fierce and hot, washes through her, overwhelming the fear. It's gratitude. It's horror. It's a love so powerful. It chokes her. "Oh God, Shadow," she whispers, her voice breaking. She quickly deposits a still crying Leo back into the safety of his basket and crawls to the wolf's side. Blood is pooling on the floorboards, dark and slick. The angle of his leg is wrong, terribly wrong. "It's okay," she sobs, her hands hovering over him, not knowing where to touch, what to do. "It's okay. I've got you." He looks at her, his golden eyes clouded with pain. He licks her hand, a weak, rasping gesture. She remembers what Mark said, what he threatened, their animal control. They would come with tranquilizer guns and catch poles. They would see a giant, aggressive wolf that had attacked a man. They would put him down. The thought is a physical blow, knocking the air from her lungs. No, she will not let that happen. She will not let the world, Mark's world, punish him for saving her. She doesn't know what she's going to do, how to fix a broken bone on a creature this large, how to keep him safe. But as she looks into his eyes, she knows one thing with absolute certainty. She will not abandon him. She reaches out, tears streaming down her face, and wraps her arms around his thick neck, burying her face in his fur. She shields his wounded body with her own. "I've got you," she whispers again, a desperate, fervent promise. "I won't let anyone hurt you." She holds him, her small frame a useless, fragile shield against the world. And then, something beneath her begins to shift. It starts with a tremor, a deep, violent shudder that runs through the wolf's body. A groan tears from his throat, but it's not a sound of pain. It's deeper, more human. A sickening crack echoes in the small room, the sound of bone breaking or resetting. Elara pulls back, her eyes wide with a new, dawning horror. The wolf's body is convulsing, changing. The form she knows, the shape she has come to love, is distorting before her very eyes. His muzzle seems to shorten, to flatten. His shoulders broaden and shift, the bones popping with audible, gruesome cracks. The thick black fur recedes, like a tide pulling away from a shore of pale skin. The leg that was broken at a horrific angle twists, straightens, and lengthens into a human limb. She can only stare, frozen in a paralysis of sheer, mind-shattering disbelief. It's a nightmare. It has to be. In a matter of seconds that stretch into an eternity, the transformation is complete. Where the massive black wolf had lain bleeding on her floor, there is now a man. He is naked, his body lean and corded with muscle, marred by scars both old and new. The gash on his shoulder is still there, bleeding sluggishly down his arm. His dark hair is matted with sweat and dirt. He is unconscious, or close to it, his chest rising and falling in ragged, shallow breaths. But his face, it's a strong face, all sharp angles and stubborn jaw, softened only by the vulnerability of his current state. And she knows him. She doesn't know his name, or his voice, or the feel of his skin, but she knows the absolute stillness of his presence. She knows the fierce, protective spirit that radiates from him even now. And when his eyelids flutter open, she knows his eyes. They are the same, the exact same shade of molten gold, burning with an impossible intelligence. They are the eyes of shadow. They meet hers, and in them she sees pain, exhaustion, and a deep, soul-crushing apology. Then they roll back in his head, and he goes limp. The world tilts on its axis. The quiet of the cabin is a roaring in her ears. A wolf. A man who is a wolf. Her mind struggles to catch up, to process the impossible reality laid bare on her floor. The rapid healing, the unnatural intelligence, the bond with Leo. It all clicks into place with a terrifying, resounding clarity. He's not just not a wolf. He's something else entirely. Something from the stories her grandfather used to whisper about. Stories she'd dismissed as folklore. A whimper from the laundry basket breaks the spell. Leo, the baby. He had been with him. This man-wolf. This being. The sight of the baby galvanizes her. Shock gives way to a strange, frantic practicality. She can't leave him here on the floor. He's bleeding. He's hurt. Man or wolf, he is her protector. He is wounded because of her. Her body moves before her mind can protest. She grabs the quilts from her bed, dragging them to the floor. He's heavy, a dead weight of solid muscle, but somehow she manages to roll him onto the thick padding. She runs to the bathroom, grabbing towels, the first aid kit. Her hands shake as she cleans the wound on his shoulder. It's a deep puncture, angry and inflamed. Touching his skin is surreal. It's warm, human. Goosebumps rise on his arm as the cold, damp cloth makes contact. She works in a daze, cleaning and disinfecting, her brain refusing to process the full implications of what she's doing. She's tending to a man who, minutes ago, was an animal. A man who has lived in her home for 2 weeks without her knowing. When she's done, she manages to cover him with another blanket. He's too heavy to move to the bed, so she makes a makeshift sickbay on the floor beside the hearth. She tends to Leo, changing him, feeding him, her movements jerky and automatic. The baby seems to sense the shift in the atmosphere. He's fussy, his eyes constantly straying to the still form on the floor. Once Leo is settled again, she sinks into the armchair, her body finally succumbing to the tremors of shock. She stares at the man, at Shadow. So many questions. A roaring tidal wave of them. Who is he? What is he? Where did he and Leo come from? Was the attack that injured him the first time a human attack? A hunter? And the biggest question of all, the one that whispers in the most terrified corner of her mind. Why her? Why did he come to her door? She watches him for hours. She watches the slow, steady rise and fall of his chest. She watches the way the firelight plays across the sharp planes of his face. She tries to reconcile the image of the massive wolf with the man lying before her. They are two halves of an impossible whole. Late in the night, he begins to stir. He groans, a low, human sound of pain that makes her heart ache. His eyelids flutter. He blinks, his gaze unfocused as he takes in the ceiling, the room, her. His golden eyes, the one constant in this shifting reality, find hers. They clear, focusing with a startling intensity. You. His voice is a raw, gravelly whisper, rough from disuse. It sends a shiver down her spine. He tries to sit up, hissing in pain as the movement pulls at his injured shoulder. Don't, she says, her own voice surprisingly steady. She gets up and kneels beside him. Don't move. You're hurt. He ignores her, pushing himself up onto one elbow, his jaw tight with effort. His gaze sweeps the room, landing on the basket where Leo is sleeping peacefully. A visible wave of relief washes over his features. Then he looks back at her. His expression is a complex, painful mix of guilt, fear, and something else she can't name, something that looks a lot like reverence. I'm sorry, he rasps. I never wanted you to see. I never wanted to frighten you. Frighten me? She lets out a shaky, borderline hysterical laugh. You turned from a wolf into a man on my floor. I think we're a little past frightened. A ghost of a smile touches his lips, but it doesn't reach his eyes. I can explain. I think you'd better, she says, crossing her arms over her chest, a feeble attempt to hold herself together. He takes a deep breath, wincing as it jars his shoulder. My name is KL. The name settles in the air between them. KL, not Shadow. A real name for a real man. We are shapeshifters, werewolves. In your old stories, my pack lives deep in this mountain range. We keep to ourselves. We avoid humans. Then why come here? She asks, the most pressing question bubbling to the surface. His gaze is so intense it feels like a physical touch. We were attacked, rival shifters, vying for territory. My brother Leo's father and his mate were killed. I was injured, but I got away with Leo. I was trying to get to a safe place, an old outpost, but I was losing too much blood. I knew I wouldn't make it. He pauses, his throat working, and then I smelled it. Your scent, on the wind. My scent? It was like a beacon, he says, his voice dropping lower, taking on a rough, intimate quality. It smelled of loneliness and strength, of wood smoke and paper, and a grief so deep it sang. It pulled me here. I didn't know why. I just knew I had to get to you, that you were safe. Ilara's mind whirls. He was drawn to her pain. I collapsed on your porch. I didn't know what else to do. I thought, if you saw Leo, you might help him, even if you were afraid of me. He looks down at his hands. I never expected you to bring me inside, to tend to my wounds, to talk to me. You heard all that? She asks, a hot flush of embarrassment creeping up her neck. All her confessions, her whispered fears about Mark, about her failures. He heard it all. Every word, he says softly, his golden eyes lifting to meet hers again. And every word made it harder to stay hidden, and harder to leave. There's a universe of unspoken meaning in his gaze, a weight of emotion that makes the air thick and hard to breathe. But what you did today, he continues, his voice strained. When he attacked, you threw yourself over me. You shielded me, a human, shielding one of my kind. You had no idea what I was, but you were willing to protect me. He reaches out, his fingers brushing against her cheek. His touch is hesitant, warm, and it sends a jolt of electricity through her entire body. "You can't know what that means," he whispers. "For someone like me, for someone like us." "What does it mean?" she whispers back, her voice barely audible. His expression becomes unbearably pained. He pulls his hand back as if burned. "It means I have endangered you beyond measure," he says, his voice turning harsh, self-recriminating. "It means I have brought my world to your doorstep, and it will destroy you." He looks at her, and the raw vulnerability in his eyes steals the air from her lungs. There is a bond, a connection that happens sometimes, once in a lifetime, if we are lucky, or unlucky. It's a pull of the soul, a fated thing. I felt it the moment I scented you on the wind. A recognition, but it is not sealed. Not unless... Unless what? She presses, her heart hammering. His golden eyes are filled with a terrible, beautiful light. Unless the human counterpart accepts the other, the wolf, willingly, and not just accepts, protects, an act of selfless sacrifice, in the face of fear. He gestures weakly to the floor between them. "What you did for me today, for Shadow, you sealed it, Elara." The revelation hangs in the air, shimmering and terrifying. Fated, a bond, sealed. It's the stuff of the fairy tales her grandfather used to tell her, the stuff of the romance novels she was always too afraid to write. It's impossible. It's insane. And yet, as she looks at him, at this man who was a wolf, who listened to her darkest secrets and protected her from her past, it feels more real than anything in her life. It's the missing piece. The answer to a question she never knew she was asking. It's the quiet hum of rightness she felt when she touched his fur, the sense of safety she felt in his presence. It wasn't just comfort, it was connection. Kale's face hardens, his jaw tightening as he pushes himself further away from her. The movement is deliberate, a clear act of rejection. "And that is why you have to go," he says, his voice flat and cold, a stark contrast to the intimacy of moments before. "I will be gone by morning. You need to pack your things and leave this place. Go back to the city. Go somewhere my enemies can't find you. Somewhere I can't find you." The words are like a physical blow. Leave. After everything. After she let him in, cared for him, trusted him. After he has just told her they are connected by fate itself, he is telling her to leave. The old familiar pain of abandonment rises in her throat, sharp and bitter, its mark all over again. "You're too sensitive. You're not what I need. You're disposable." But this time, something is different. Something inside her, a part of her she thought was long dead and buried, catches fire. It's not the timid, wounded heart of the woman who fled the city. It's a new thing, forged in the quiet of these woods, tempered by the trust of a wolf and the laughter of a baby. It's anger. "No," she says, the word coming out quiet but laced with steel. Kale looks at her, startled. "What?" "No," she repeats, louder this time. She gets to her feet, standing over him, no longer the frightened, kneeling caregiver. "I am not going anywhere." "Elara, you don't understand," he says, his voice strained with a desperate patience. "I am dangerous. My life is dangerous. The shifters who attacked my brother will be looking for me, for Leo. They will see you as a liability, a weakness to be exploited." "So what?" she challenges, her voice rising. "You think I'm safer back in a world that chewed me up and spit me out? With men like Mark, who think my soul is a hobby, who think my heart is a flaw?" She gestures wildly around the small cabin, her sanctuary, her infirmary, her home. "I have felt safer in this cabin for the past 2 weeks with a giant mysterious wolf than I have in the last 5 years of my life. You think I'm afraid of your world? I'm terrified of going back to mine." His face is a mask of torment. "I can't protect you." "You already did," she cries, kneeling in front of him again, her anger giving way to a raw, pleading honesty. "You took a blow for me, Kale. And maybe I'm just a weak, human woman, but I threw my body over yours to protect you right back. Does that mean nothing? Does this bond you're talking about only work one way?" Tears are welling in her eyes, hot and furious. "You don't get to do this. You don't get to show up here broken and bleeding. and let me put the pieces back together. You don't get to listen to me confess my deepest fears and then use them to push me away. You don't get to make me feel this, and then tell me to run away. Feel what? He whispers, his voice breaking. The name of the emotion hangs between them, unspoken but deafeningly loud. I was falling in love with a wolf, you idiot. She confesses, the words tumbling out on a sob. I was sitting here, night after night, telling my life story to a creature I thought was just an animal, and I was falling in love with his silence, and his patience, and the way he looked at Leo, and the way he made me feel safe. So don't you dare tell me what's dangerous for me. Being without you feels a hell of a lot more dangerous than being with you. A single tear escapes his eye, tracing a path through the grime on his cheek. Ilara. He breathes her name like a prayer, a curse, a surrender. At that moment, a small sound comes from the basket. Leo is awake. He pushes himself up, his little face crinkling as he prepares to cry. But then his eyes land on Kale. A slow, gummy smile spreads across his face. Duh, he babbles. A nonsense sound. Or maybe not. With a surprising strength, he pulls himself over the edge of the low basket and tumbles onto the blankets on the floor. He begins to crawl, a clumsy, determined little creature, right into the space between Ilara and Kale. He crawls until he reaches Kale's outstretched hand, and he rests his head against it, content. The sight breaks something in Kale. The dam of his control, his guilt, his fear, it all shatters. He thinks you're his father, Ilara whispers, her heart aching. I've been watching you for weeks, Kale confesses, his voice thick with unshed tears. Long before the attack, I was patrolling the border of our territory. I scented you. I couldn't stay away. I would lie in the trees and just watch. I saw you sitting at that desk, so lost. I saw you crying by the fire. I felt every second of your loneliness as if it were my own. This bond, it didn't start today, Ilara. It started the moment I knew you existed. It has been agony. His golden eyes burn into hers, stripped bare of all pretense. I want you, he says, the words raw, elemental. I have wanted you since I first saw you. As a man, as a wolf, as every part of what I am. It terrifies me. Good, she breathes, a watery smile touching her lips. It terrifies me too. And that's all it takes. He closes the small distance between them, his uninjured hand coming up to cup her face, his thumb stroking her jaw. His touch is reverence. It's desperation. It's homecoming. He leans in and kisses her. It is not a gentle kiss. It is a kiss born of weeks of longing, of a lifetime of solitude, of a fate so powerful it brought two worlds crashing together. It's desperate and hungry and raw with all the things they haven't said. It tastes of salt from their tears, of blood and iron from his wounds, of the wild, earthy scent of his skin. She kisses him back with everything she is, with the lonely writer, the failed fiancé, the too sensitive woman. She kisses him with the fierce protector she has become. She pours all her fear and hope and a love so new and shocking it takes her breath away into that one, single point of contact. It's a sealing, a promise, not of safety, but of solidarity. When they finally break apart, breathless and shaking, they are no longer just a woman and a man. They are a choice, an anchor in a storm. He rests his forehead against hers, their breath mingling in the cool air. Leo makes a soft cooing sound, nestled between them. Stay, Kale whispers, the word a plea, a surrender to the fate he had tried to fight. Always, Ilara answers, her voice sure and clear for the first time in a very long time. The cabin is no longer a prison or a sanctuary. It is simply, finally, home. 6 months later. The cabin is different. The same four walls, the same view of the stoic pines, but the air inside has changed. It's alive. It hums with a quiet, contented energy. The scent of old paper and pine is now mingled with the smell of baking bread, the clean scent of laundry drying by the fire, and the constant, faint, comforting musk of wolf. Ilara sits at her desk, but she isn't staring at a blank screen. Her fingers fly across the keyboard, the rhythmic clatter a happy, industrious sound. Words pour out of her, not the tortured, self-conscious prose she used to bleed onto the page, but a story that is rich and alive, full of magic and moonlight and the fierce, wild love she has come to know. She is not writing a thriller. She is writing a fairy tale. A pair of strong arms wrap around her from behind, and a warm chin rests on her shoulder. Kale's scent envelops her, and she leans back into his embrace with a sigh of pure contentment. "You're going to wear your fingers down to the bone," he murmurs, his lips brushing against her ear. "I have a lot of lost time to make up for," she replies, not taking her eyes off the screen. This character is just about to realize the beast in the castle isn't a monster at all. Kale chuckles, a low, warm rumble in his chest. Sounds familiar. He presses a kiss to her temple and straightens up. His shoulder is fully healed, leaving behind a puckered, silvery scar that she traces with her fingertips whenever he is near. He moves with a fluid, easy grace, whether in his human skin or the wolf form he sometimes takes to run patrols, a magnificent black shadow streaking through the trees. His pack has accepted her. It wasn't easy. They were wary, suspicious of the human woman who had captured their alpha's heart and sealed a bond most of them only ever heard of in legends. But they saw the way he looked at her. They saw her fierce devotion to him and to Leo, and slowly, grudgingly, they came to respect her. She wasn't the fragile human they expected. She was Alara, the alpha's mate, the one whose compassion had saved them all. On the floor, Leo, now a sturdy toddler with a shock of dark hair and his uncle's golden eyes, lets out a triumphant shriek. He's managed to stack 3 wooden blocks on top of each other before gleefully knocking them down. He looks up at them, his face beaming with pride. This is her life now. A beautiful, impossible tapestry woven from the threads of what was, and the magic of what is. One afternoon, they have to drive into town for supplies. It's a rare trip, one they usually try to avoid. As they are leaving the general store, Ilara loaded with bags and Kale carrying a giggling Leo on his shoulders, a sleek, familiar car pulls up across the street. Mark gets out. He looks the same. Expensive coat, polished shoes, an air of entitled importance, but something about him seems diminished, smaller. He sees her. His eyes widen, and a flicker of the old anger crosses his face. He starts to walk toward them, a familiar, condescending sneer forming on his lips. Kale, feeling her tense, stops. He doesn't say a word. He just turns his head and looks at Mark. He doesn't growl. He doesn't threaten. He simply looks. His golden eyes are flat, ancient, and filled with a power that Mark, for all his bluster and privilege, could never comprehend. It is the gaze of the apex predator, the alpha. Mark stops dead in his tracks. The sneer falters. He sees Alara, radiant and smiling, not the broken, sensitive creature he abandoned. He sees the strong, confident man at her side, the beautiful child on his shoulders. He sees a life, a family, a happiness that he has no part in, that he could never offer her. He sees everything he has lost, everything he so arrogantly threw away. For the first time, Alara feels nothing, not fear, not anger, not even sadness, just a vague, distant pity for a man so trapped in his own small, colorless world. Without a word, Mark turns and gets back in his car. Kale rests a hand on the small of her back. "Are you okay?" She looks up at him, at his concerned face, and then at Leo, who is happily babbling away, oblivious. She smiles, a real brilliant smile that reaches her eyes. "I'm perfect," she says. That evening, she sits on the porch steps, leaning against Kale's chest as he sits behind her, his arms wrapped securely around her waist. Leo is asleep inside. The cabin is warm and glowing, and the stars are a brilliant, glittering canopy overhead. The woods are no longer menacing. They are a cradle, a kingdom, their kingdom. She thinks about the woman she was less than a year ago, drowning in silence and failure. She thinks about Mark's final, cutting verdict. Too sensitive. He'd meant it as an insult, a condemnation. He'd been wrong. Her sensitivity wasn't a weakness. It was a compass. It was the thing that heard a cry in a storm and chose to open the door. It was the thing that saw past the fangs and the fur to the pain beneath. It was the thing that recognized a kindred soul, a fellow outcast. Her greatest, most damning flaw had turned out to be her greatest strength. It was the key that had unlocked this entire, impossible, beautiful world. Kale nuzzles her neck, his breath warm against her skin. "What are you thinking about?" he murmurs. She turns her head, tilting her face up to his. In the moonlight, his golden eyes seem to glow. "The ending," she says softly. "I think I've finally figured out the ending to my story."